Good morning, everybody. Can somebody confirm remotely that they can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. All right. So a couple things before we get started on chapter 6. The first is that I received all of the login information from supplemental instruction sessions. So I will be adding in all that extra credit sometime tomorrow. And then I will be taking all the grades that currently sit in BB Learn and I will be transferring them over to Cengage for exam. So by the end of the day tomorrow, you should have an exact grade in this class if you look on Cengage, okay? By the end of the day tomorrow. Let me know if you have any questions on that at all. As far as the exam is concerned, the average on the exam was about a 74%, which is about 2% higher than I typically see in this class when I do it in-person class, a regular in-person class. So it's a little bit better than what I expected. I know some of you didn't do as well as you would have liked. I don't think you should panic at this point. There's a lot of points left in this class. So if you're concerned about your grade, let me know and we can talk about it and we can try and come up with maybe some strategies. But remember that your final is not cumulative in this class. So if you miss the equations on the exam and you're like, I need to figure out how to do these equations, you probably don't. We really are going to move on from here. And this, believe it or not, was the easy stuff. So this is sort of, the next exam is sort of when this class ramps up. So I would say chapter 7, which we start next week, is when shit gets real in this class, okay? So from chapter 7 on, I would really weigh heavily the costs and benefits of coming to class, because that's when things get a little bit tricky. Any questions about any of that? All right, your next exam over chapters 6 through 8 is scheduled for October 5th. I will put that in the announcements on BB Learn so that if you're looking for it, that's where it'll be. It's going to be really similar to this one, pretty much the same in terms of formatting and time and taking it during your regularly scheduled class period, and all of that's going to remain the same. But it'll be over 3 chapters instead of 5. There's a reason it's only over 3, is because 7 and 8 are pretty difficult chapters. Okay, this class really ramps up to the middle and then it begins to taper off as we get to the end of the semester. So it's that time that we start ramping up. Just a heads up, we will start chapter 6 today. We will finish chapter 6 on Friday. Chapter 6 homework will be due on Sunday. We will have a worksheet after I finish up the lecture on Friday. So you definitely want to come to get the worksheet done and get it turned in. Sometime this afternoon, I'll have that chapter 6 worksheet available for you on BB Learn where the other ones have been. Any questions over any of that? Everybody good? All right, let's get started. So chapter 6 is a little bit different than the rest of the stuff we're going to do this semester, in that it really digs into consumer demand and the choices that you and I make as consumers. We are able to, A, think about why we make the choices we make, and then also think about how we optimize the choices that we make, and how we demand goods and services based on our need to maximize our own satisfaction. Okay, so that's what this chapter is about. It's really different than what we're going to do in chapter 7 and beyond. Okay, so it's really just a singular chapter that doesn't really build towards anything else. But it's an important thing to understand. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about how consumers' #1 goal is to maximize their satisfaction. You and I do it every day. You and I try and find that perfect combination of how we spend our money, how we spend our energy, how we spend our time, so that we can absolutely extract every ounce of satisfaction or gratification out of it. It's very complicated, but your brain is really good at this thing because it's been doing it forever, right? Your brain, since you were very, very small, has been trying to help you make choices to maximize satisfaction. It's how we're programmed, okay? So what we're gonna try and do today is we're gonna try and talk about that satisfaction, and then we're gonna try and assign numeric values to your satisfaction so that we can do some analyses, okay? It's very abstract. This is a very economic thing to do, to try and quantify satisfaction, but we're gonna try and do it, okay? So in this class, when you hear the word utility, what we mean is satisfaction. It's just different terminology that we use in econ. We all, as economic beings, try and maximize that utility or satisfaction. Remember, it's not just about money. It's about time and energy and money, okay? All those things that we have that we're using to find that satisfaction. Satisfaction is subjective, which means it's different for you than it is for me. Our scales are different. The way we value goods and services is different. The way we value our time is different. So it's very personal. So when we talk about satisfaction or utility, that's a very personal discussion and a very personal analysis that we all have to do for ourselves. But we're going to try and quantify it. Like a lot of other times in economics, we have to make some assumptions, and we have to sort of take that snapshot in time that I talk about over and over and over again. And that is that we have to assume in this case that your tastes are pretty stable. That while your tastes might change over a week or a month or a year, typically they stay pretty consistent. We like what we like. Yes, they change, but usually over longer periods of time than shorter periods of time. This doesn't always hold true, and I know that, but it's the best assumption we can make, and so we're going to stick with it because it's relatively true. And that brings us to the law that addresses our satisfaction. And that is the law of diminishing marginal utility. Diminishing, it's going down. It's going down. Marginal, we're talking about that additional or incremental of something. This is a very, very important term in economics because we try, or we understand that marginal analysis is probably the most important analysis that we do. They're looking at something in total gives you this really broad picture, but looking at what happens to anything per unit is really where you see the real picture, okay, the details. And so the law of diminishing marginal utility, it's really the law that sort of helps us predict what your satisfaction looks like. It's really the only one we have. And the first thing is sort of defining some terminology. Total utility or total satisfaction, right, is how much satisfaction you gain from consuming all of the units you're going to consume of a certain good. Marginal utility is the incremental or the change or the additional utility that you get from consuming one more unit, then one additional unit, and then one unit after that. It's analyzing it in units. It is possible to experience something called disutility, which is negative satisfaction from consuming an item, right? We've probably all done this before, friends, right? We've probably eaten one extra helping of mashed potatoes on Thanksgiving, right? We've gone to a party and partaken more than we should, right? And we drive ourselves into disutility. A lot of times we don't realize what we're doing until after we've done it. Hopefully then, when we realize we are experiencing negative utility or disutility, we could stop. Sometimes we don't, right? But that's usually the signal. Like, there's no more utility here for you. Stop consuming that thing. But you need to know it's a thing, right? So here is the actual law. The law of diminishing marginal utility says, the more of a good you consume, the smaller the increase in total utility, or the smaller your marginal utility gets, because the total is just the sum of the marginal, okay? So the more of a good you consume, the smaller the increase in total utility you receive from each additional unit. What this is saying is that if you and I are gonna consume, 10 of something in a given week, we usually get more satisfaction from unit number 1 than we get from unit number 10. Because by the time we've consumed unit number 10, right, we're tired of it, okay? We're tired of it and we're just not enjoying it as much as we did when we consumed that first unit in the week. That's all this is saying. Is there an instance where you think this might not be true when it comes to consumption? Yeah.
Medicine.
What's that?
Medicine.
What kind of medicine? Are you saying like something where you have to take like an antibiotic for like 3 days and?
No, it's something like consume.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Which might be more consistent. Yeah, like your utility might be more consistent. Awesome. Money. Yeah, money's an interesting one. I had somebody in my earlier section say the first money you get more satisfaction from than like additional monies you earn throughout your life. And Dennis, what you're saying is you think it's the opposite? Like you get more satisfaction out of each dollar the more dollars you have? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, just like an equal amount of satisfaction for each dollar, because the dollar is not inherently worth more at different times that you
Okay,
earn it.
got you. Yeah. Okay, I like it. That's an interesting way to think about it, is that each dollar's worth a dollar, right? Why would it bring you more satisfaction? Yeah, okay, cool. Anything else you can think of? There are examples. But remember, this is a personal thing. So it would be your example, and it might not be my example, right? Economics isn't a perfect science. We're just sort of trying to come up with some models that we generally hold to be true. This is generally true, not always true, okay? Okay, so let's talk about how we would measure this thing, how we would measure satisfaction. Well, you do it individually because it's your satisfaction. I can't actually say to you that I get more satisfaction than you out of good A, because I can't actually come up with a scale we both understand about how much we value that thing, right? And so that's a really hard thing to say. So really all I can do is I can only create a scale for my satisfaction, and I can only let you create a scale for your satisfaction. So because it's subjective, right? You're the only one that gets to do it, and you get to come up with some number, and you can do it in your head right now because we're going to do a little activity. Come up with a number in your head that you're going to let represent the absolute pinnacle of satisfaction. A number that represents this thing is so satisfying, I can't imagine being more satisfied, right? It doesn't matter what the number is, just put it in your head, okay? Then you have a scale. If something provides you half the satisfaction of that maximum, then it would have a numerical value of half that, right? It's your scale, it's your satisfaction. So let's do a little exercise, okay? Let's say, okay, let's say, sorry people. Okay, let's say that I give you a pizza. It's your favorite pizza, and I ordered it just for you, okay? It's a large pizza I ordered for you. And as part of your participation points or your grade in this class, part of passing this class, is you are required to eat the entire thing right now. I want you to think about using that number you just put in your head is like the most satisfying thing in the world that couldn't possibly be more satisfying. I want you to go through and I want you to give each of these slices a number in order that you're eating them. So this is slice number 1, this is slice number 2, so on and so forth. You got to eat them all, okay? I want you to give them each a number that represents how much satisfaction on your personal scale you're going to get from those pizzas. It could go negative, right? I would be sick. I would have a negative total utility if I had to eat an entire pizza at whatever time it is, right? 9:20 or 9:30 in the morning, okay? And then I want you to total it up. So these are your marginal utility numbers. Then I want you to total them up and give me a total utility number. It can be positive or negative. These can be a combination of positives or negatives. I just want you to do it real quick. Yeah, that's right, Skogan. Free pizza is free pizza, but I'm going to make you eat it all right now. All right, Skogan, I hope you wrote some numbers down because I want your numbers. Speak up, my friend. Start with pizza number 1. What's the value? Or slice number 1, sorry.
So wait, do you want me to just talk?
I want you to just talk.
All right. So for me, it's a little different. So like, I would say my first pizza would probably be around like a 2 or 3 out of a scale of 10. Because what I like to do is, you know, if I'm gonna eat this entire pizza, that's my goal, you know. And then so with each slice, I would probably go up by 1. And then if I finished that whole pizza, you know, I would be so happy, you know.
Oh, wow. Okay, so thinking of the grade as the goal.
Oh yeah, and the pizza.
Okay. I like what you're saying. I like where you're going with this. I want you to go back and I want you to think about the pizza. Think about that pizza. The first bite, the first slice, how delicious it is. From that perspective, what do you think this looks like?
No, it's the same thing because usually when I buy a pizza, I try to eat it all by myself.
So you actually enjoy the last slice more than the first.
Yeah.
Okay.
I always eat chicken Alfredo pizza from Domino's, and I can eat almost a pizza and a half by myself.
Okay, this is awesome. It's kind of counterintuitive to the process we're going through here, but I like it. I like it, okay? You're gonna be an exception to the rule. You eat the pizza for sport more
Oh
than
yeah.
Okay, I don't hate it. Okay, how about somebody else?
I'll go. So I
Okay.
kind of my scale my number, like the top one was like 22.
Okay.
So my first slice I had like as a 22 because I like pizza a lot. And then the second one I had it like again as like a 22.
Okay.
But then after that it kind of drops to like an 18 because I'm getting a little more full, I guess. To what?
What is slice number 3?
18.
Okay.
And then after that, it's like a 15. And then a 12. And then it really drops off to like a 6. And then like a 3 and like a 1.
Okay. So you're actually gonna enjoy the entire pizza.
Yeah, probably.
Some
But like, just barely, you know.
Just barely on that last slice. Like you're just pushing it through.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So you can see positive utility all the way through. So still getting a tiny bit of satisfaction, right, out of that last slice, but never going negative, never being like, oh, I just can't, I don't want it, right? Still being able to achieve some satisfaction. If we were to add all of these up, we would get his positive total utility for eating that pizza, right? Some of you went negative, right? His scale started at 22, random, right? It doesn't matter, that's his scale. And the only reason that number matters is because then all of these other numbers are relative to it. That's what matters, is that last slice, he's getting 1/22 of the satisfaction that he got from the first. It's that relationship that we want. It's not the numbers that matter so much, right? All right. You and I have brains that do this all very, very efficiently. And we get to, we get to some slice where our body begins to fire that we're getting full and, right, doesn't feel as satisfying, so on and so forth, okay? All right. So let's look at the example from your book of the utility, marginals and total utility. This example is for water after you've run 4 miles. I've never run 4 miles. I've never even run close to 4 miles, okay? But I can imagine that once you do, you probably would like a little water, but you don't want too much, right? So you can see in this case, we have glasses of water 0 through 5. Total utility is just a sum of the marginal. This does adhere to the law of diminishing marginal utility, and every example you're going to have in this class is going to adhere to the law. Now, is this wrong? No, it's not wrong. Did he receive 22 units of utility from units 1 and 2? Is that wrong? No. That's his satisfaction scale. I'm not going to tell him his satisfaction scale is wrong. And I usually have a couple of students in a regular in-person class. I start calling on people. And so I usually have some student that has actually a lower number for this first slice, like maybe a 20 or maybe a 10. And the rationale is, well, usually by the time I get the pizza, I'm so hungry that I just like inhale the first slice. I don't even taste it. I'm just like trying to get rid of that, like that growling in my stomach or that pain in my stomach. And so then I start to slow down a little bit and I can actually taste the second slice, right? That's not wrong either. But in this class, right, we're going to adhere purely to that law of diminishing marginal utility. And so you can see the first glass of water gives 40 units of marginal utility. Second glass 20, you can see these go down. And this total utility number is simply a sum, right? It's 40 plus 0 gives me 40. 40 plus 20 gives me 60. 40 plus 20 plus 10 gives me 70, so on and so forth. When we get down to that fifth glass of water, I begin to experience marginal disutility, negative utility. Chances are I'm going to stop either before unit number 5, if I anticipate I'm going to have negative utility, or I start on glass number 5, right? Start hurling it everywhere and decide that's my signal, we're at disutility, right? And then probably not consume any units after that. you can see that total utility begins to decline, right? Overall, begins to decline from 75 to 73, but we still have positive total utility. I love this exam question because it's a critical thinking question. When marginal utility begins to go negative or is negative, when marginal utility is negative, what can you say for sure about total utility? It's going down. A lot of students say, well, negative marginal utility must mean negative total utility. No, not yet. You don't know that. And if you continue to drink water past the 5th glass, I mean, that's just ridiculous. You might, and it might eventually turn negative. But if I didn't have to eat this pizza all in one setting, if I could stop at my 2nd or 3rd slice, which would be my tendency, then I would never go into negative. I forced some of you into negative. But when you have the option here, like the glasses of water, you're just gonna stop. Chances are your total utility is never gonna go negative, right? Unless you make a bad decision, which sometimes when we're, not of sound mind, we make bad decisions about utility. But, or when we are impaired in some way, we could make it a bad decision on utility. But for the most part, we're gonna stop. So what can you say for sure about total utility when you have negative marginal utility? You can say it's going down. That's all you can say, it's going down, okay? All right, so here's just the visual on that. No new information here. This is just graphing total utility, right? Getting past 4 units to 5 and seeing that begins to fall again. Here's marginal utility going down, following that law of diminishing marginal utility until it goes negative. We just like to graph things. All right, so now let's talk about this idea of utility maximization. I'm talking about first how price and utility are important, and then we'll get into the calculation on utility. So let's talk first about a world without scarcity. This is not the world we live in. We live in the very opposite world from that. But if we lived in a world without scarcity and basically everything was free, because that's kind of what that would mean, if there was enough of everything for everybody to go around, things would likely be free. And there are things that are free in our lives. There are certain points in time where we get stuff for free. And the important thing to understand about when things are free is that we increase consumption of that good until we have extracted every molecule of utility from it. If there's something available for free, what amount do you take? Well, the answer is easy. You take it until there's no more satisfaction left in taking another unit. Okay? And we actually practice this frequently. An interesting study was done about Medicare, which is the medical insurance portion of Social Security benefits. And that when people got to go see doctors, etc., for free, with no co-payments, no anything, that people would go see their doctor when they were lonely, because it didn't cost them anything, right? So they would go to their doctor for either the smallest reason, just because they felt like getting out of the house, because they wanted somebody to talk to, for a host of different reasons. But that if they charged people on Medicare even $5 as a copay to go see their doctors, that appointments went down by like a third, because all of the sudden there was a physical cost involved, right? There was an opportunity cost. And so sometimes offering people things for free isn't a very efficient allocation of that thing, right? Even if it's a minimal amount, making the people who really want it or need it end up with it, okay? A world with scarcity, that's the world we live in. It's the world we're going to talk about. You have to make choices. You know you have to make choices. Well, every day, your brain actually takes the time, energy, and money that you currently have and finds this perfect combination of activities and goods and services that you're going to do in order to maximize your satisfaction or maximize your utility for that day. It does. Every single day, every single minute, this is happening in your head. What we're going to try and do, and this is the most complicated part of this chapter, what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and take what happens in your brain and we're going to try and put it down on paper by using that utility scale that you kind of already came up with and now understand. Okay? All right, let's look at some numbers. This is from your book. There's nothing really complicated here. Let's just go through it bit by bit. So in this particular example, we are talking about someone who only consumes 2 things in a given week. We're just keeping it simple. In reality, you consume hundreds of goods and services in a week. We're just keeping it simple. A person that consumes only pizza and movie rentals. And they are trying, or we are trying, to figure out what that perfect utility maximizing combination of those 2 goods is going to be. So let's go through and look at these numbers, and then we'll talk about the calculation that we would use to find them. So column number 1, number consumed per week. Let's look at pizzas first. That's these first 4 columns. First column, number consumed per week. Number 3, marginal utility, so the additional utility you get from consuming each additional unit, you can see that that goes down, follows the law of diminishing marginal utility. Then you see total utility, which you should recognize as being the sum of these as we go, just like the glasses of water. 56 plus 32 gives you 88. 56 plus 32 plus 24 gives you 112, so on and so forth. It's all positive, okay? We probably stopped at 6 because it might have gotten really, really small or even gone negative after 6, but you could have kept going if you needed to. That's not a magic number of any sort. And then over here, you have movie rentals, the same thing. What you haven't seen before is this 4th and 8th column on these 2 charts. And it's something we call marginal utility per dollar. This is something that we only calculate to do this analysis. But it's hard to compare the satisfaction from, in this case, an $8 pizza and the satisfaction from a $4 movie rent. That's an impossible analysis to make unless you figure out what marginal utility per dollar is, marginal utility per unit of satisfaction. So how much satisfaction you're getting out of each dollar spent on that item. It's how we take multiple goods, in this case it's just 2, but multiple goods and come up with an apples to apples comparison on how much enjoyment we're getting out of that thing. We must get more satisfaction out of something we spend $100 on than something we spend $1 on, or we wouldn't do it. We should be getting 100 times more satisfaction for a $100 item than we do a $1 item, right? So this helps us do a dollar to dollar comparison on marginal utility per unit. So you can see we've done that here, right? So this is 56 divided by 8 gives you 7. 32 divided by 8 gives you 4. 8's the price of the pizza. So we divide the marginal utility at that particular unit by the price to get the marginal utility per dollar. We've done the same thing over here, except for our price was $4. 40 divided by 4 gives you 10. 28 divided by 4 gives you 7. Not hard math. But on an exam, for some reason, this marginal utility per dollar seems to elude students. So just know where you're getting your numbers, and this is easy. It's marginal utility divided by the price, done. Okay? All right, I'm gonna go to the next slide to show you an equation, and then we're gonna double back. So we're trying to get to that utility maximization, right? That's the end goal for all consumers, is finding that that satisfaction maximizing condition. And in economics, we call this condition, we call this beautiful combination of all goods that maximizes satisfaction, our consumer equilibrium. It's much like a market equilibrium, right? Where supply equals demand. This is that perfect place where consumption and spending come together to give you the highest amount of satisfaction possible. So there are actually two components to this condition, two components to this equilibrium. The first one is the one students tend to forget, and that's that your budget must be exhausted. You got no money left, you spent everything. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't save any money. It just means you've taken that money that you're saving and you've allocated it to the service in that bank called a savings account, okay? So it doesn't mean you don't save any money. It just means that you've made a decision about all your money. Your budget is exhausted. There's no money left. You've made decisions with all, okay? And that the last dollar spent on each good provides the same marginal utility. So the marginal utility per dollar is the same across the board. Now, you're consuming hundreds of goods in a week. So this would imply that your marginal utility per dollar for all of those goods is the same. Well, your brain is smart like that. Can do that calculation and can find that beautiful place where you're maximizing your satisfaction with what you have. Could you be more satisfied in general? Yeah, sure. But with what you have, are you maximizing your satisfaction? Okay? This equation right here is actually what we already did in columns 4 and 8 on the previous slide. MUP is marginal utility of pizza divided by the price of pizza. PP is price of pizza. Equals the marginal utility of movies, the M is movies, the little m. Marginal utility of movies is divided by the price of movies. So where the marginal utility per dollar of pizza is equal to the marginal utility per dollar of movies, exists and also exhausts your budget, that's where you're going to find your consumer equilibrium on this very, very simplified example that we've done. So let's double back. Okay, so let's look for, well, first I have to tell you what her budget was. Her budget's $40. Okay, so we have to find where all $40 are spent. That's the first condition of consumer equilibrium. The second one is we have to find where the marginal utility per dollar is equal for those units. So if we compare column 4 and 8, and we sort of work our way down, the first number that I can see that's the same in both of those columns is there's a 7. If she consumes 1 pizza and 2 movie rentals per week, we have a 7 and a 7. But does that meet the other condition? It doesn't. 1 pizza is $8. 2 movies at $4 a piece is another $8. That's only 16 bucks. We have not exhausted our $40 budget. That is not the optimal combination. So let's go down and see if we can find another one. So we work our way down and then we find 3 and 3. It's not a coincidence that's all bolded, right? But let's do the math. So at 3 and 3, that's 3 pizzas at $8 a piece or $24. And that's 4 movies at $4 a piece, which is $4 a piece, which is $16. 24 plus 16 is 40. We've exhausted our budget. And the marginal utility per dollar on those units is the same. Any questions? We could have gone down further, right? There's a 1.5 on both sides. Only one of those combinations or only one of those places are we going to exhaust the budget. Not at 2 of them, only at 1. Any questions from anybody about this? Okay, this is what the worksheet is going to be over on Friday. You're going to get lots and lots and lots of practice with this because I know it seems simple when I talk about it, but a lot of times when you have to actually do it, it feels a whole lot different. Okay. So let's go back to a conversation that we had in chapter 1. It was like the very first thing we talked about. I asked you a question and I said, which is more valuable, diamonds or water? Most of you said water, right? And I talked about it a little bit afterwards, after we sort of chatted about who picked diamonds, who picked water, why I chose what I chose. And then I told you you could take a souvenir, right? Water or diamond. And all of you said diamond. And we just tried to kind of work that out in our heads, right? It's all about utility. It's all about satisfaction. When most of you said water was more valuable, you were thinking about all of the things that water did for you in total. You get to stay alive. You have food sources, right? Most of them depend on water. We have an ecosystem, right, that depends on water. You know, all of those things. We got hygiene, we got recreation. There's all these things that water did for us. And so in total, it had a really high value or high utility. The thing about you and I is that we don't usually make decisions based on total satisfaction. We make decisions based on marginal satisfaction, marginal utility. And so then when I said you can take one and you chose diamonds, it's because you were making a marginal decision about just the next 1 unit of that thing you wanted. That's how we do it, right? Because our satisfaction scale is kind of determined as we go. That first, you don't actually know how much satisfaction that 3rd pizza a week is going to give you until you have eaten pizzas 1 and 2, right? And so it's a decision that we make as we go. And it's why we have, I think all of us hold value for our environment. But we have trouble making the marginal decisions that would benefit the environment, right? We have a hard time when we're in the moment and there's that 1 plastic water bottle and we're thirsty now, right? It's this very small decision. That's actually how we make them, right? Or to drive our car from point A to point B instead of ride or bike. You know, all of that we do on the margin. And so a lot of times we don't do a total analysis of the impact, right, that we have. This was basically your first illustration of utility and satisfaction and how we do that analysis. That's all I have. Any questions from anybody about this? All right, easy peasy. Make sure you have your worksheet ready on Friday. Have an awesome day. I'll see you then. Thanks for coming, guys. Have a good day. Thanks, Jonathan. You too. Take care. Anybody need anything? Daniel, Tyler, Tegan, Theodore? All right, I'm going to sign off.